Okay, hello everybody. I am Amanda Patterson and I am the admin of my private practice tribe. And I wanted to give a shout out to TherapyNotes for being a sponsor of my private practice tribe. It's the electronic health record that I use and I absolutely love it for my group practice. Now today, our topic is going to be, when should you raise your rates? And so setting your fee is kind of an interesting thing. There's a lot of different theories on how to set your fees. Should you set it based on what you are worth? Should you set your fee based on what other people charge? Should you charge a little more than what other people charge? Should you charge a little less than what other people charge? Or should you charge some arbitrary amount, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can initially set your fee. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you can raise your rates and know when it's time to raise your rates. I remember when I first started, I charged $80. I rented from somebody. They told me, charge $80. It's $20 less than I charge or something like that. So I didn't really do any market research. I just charged $80. And then eventually when I got going, I realized that $80 didn't really cover rent when my rent was about, let's say, like about 40%, no, maybe like 30% of the cost. So anything that I was bringing in, already 30% was going towards rent. That wasn't really going to bring me enough money for it to sustain me in the long run. And so when I was in private practice for about 1 year, I decided to up my rates. Then I moved up $20 to $100. And I let all of my clients know. At that time, I raised it on old clients and new clients because the $80 just wasn't really sustainable, especially in my market and for what my expenses were. So I think it's really important for you to know what your expenses are and know how much money you want to make every year, and see if that's in line. You may or may not have to raise your rates. So you may decide you want to add Fridays, or you want to add workshops, or you want to do something else to increase your revenue, or you may decide it is time to raise your rates. And so if you are starting to get very full, and you're getting a lot of calls, it's definitely time to raise your rates because you're not going to be able to take everybody on, and you're going to have some kind of mechanism to weed out some of the referrals. One way that you can encapsulate all of those referrals is to bring on an independent contractor, an employee that maybe takes a lower rate than you, and you take the higher rate and the employee takes the lower rate. So then that way, if somebody calls in at a certain price point, you're not losing those clients, but you are able to see clients maybe at a higher rate because you're not going to have room in your schedule. So if you're on the lower end, you may find that you're going to build up faster, and that as you continue to get more and more calls in, you're either going to have to do a wait list or you're going to have to start referring out. And so to prevent something like a wait list, you could raise your rates. And again, maybe bring on an independent contractor or an employee, depending on your state and depending on what your goals are for your private practice, to take on some of those additional clients. Another way that you can decide to raise your rates is if you've had additional trainings, right? Things like emotionally focused couples therapy, Gottman training, EMDR. Very popular right now is RTM. And so some of these more accelerated trainings or more advanced trainings are costly. And in order to maybe pay for those trainings, one way that you can make up the income is by raising your rates. You can also do some market research and see what other people in your area are charging. Now, there are some people who are going to say, no, absolutely don't do that. And there's going to be other people who say, yes, you should be competitive. You get to decide if that is something that you want to do. But if you are on the lower end of the market rate, you may want to raise that because then you know the market can really bear a therapist that is charging a little bit more. I usually like to say, if you want to be in the middle, that can be a very good place to be because you're not going to lose too many clients, right, by being very high, but you're not going to take on maybe clients who aren't a good fit for you. Another way to look at when it's time to raise your rates is your long-term goals for your practice. And so I actually ended up raising my rates last year. And what that allowed me to do was to move into a new office space. This is my new office. We've been here only a few weeks. And I needed, again, additional revenue for my practice. And so if you are looking to make big changes in your practice, whether you need a new office, whether you want to do additional trainings, whether you want to, maybe you want to hire a full-time phone person, right? There are some like amenities and luxuries that come along with running a practice that are going to cost you money. And if you are looking, for instance, I'll tell you all, like having a practice, one of the things that I set myself, like my sights on was we were going to have a coffee bar, right? I wanted my clients to walk in. If they wanted coffee and tea, I'm a tea drinker. So if they wanted coffee or tea, that would be available. But that is an additional expense that wasn't covered under our old rate at the old office where that was not included. And so something as small as coffee, it might seem that wouldn't be that much of an expense, but wait till you have a group practice if you don't already and you are purchasing the coffee. See, I'm not a coffee drinker, so I didn't know you had to have like 2 different kinds of creamers, 2 different types of sweeteners, stirs. I didn't buy stirs the first time around, right? So these are some things that you have to account for in your fee. One thing that you have to account for in your fee is any credit card fees. You cannot pass those on to clients. And so you have to absorb that. And so if you are charging $100 already, you're really only going to be getting about $97 when you account for the fees. And then you have to subtract things like rent, coffee, other things that go into running a private practice. And so if you are looking to raise your rates, I would suggest that you go through your expenses, take a look at how much you're spending on a variety of different things, and look to see if what you are charging is in line with that. So if you're trying to keep your expenses around, let's say 30%, I like to use nice whole numbers, so we will start with 100. So if you're trying to keep your expenses around 30% and you're charging $100 an hour, then only $30 of that is going to go towards your expenses. So then you need to do a bunch of math. I know therapists hate math usually, but you have to do some math or work with your accountant to see if that $100 is enough, or if you need to charge more based on what your expenses are. And maybe I'll do a whole nother discussion on when what you need to cut so you can make sure maybe your expenses are not so high. So we'll save that for another time. And so if you are not already a member of my private practice tribe on Facebook, please find our group and join. I would love to have you there. We have all of these kinds of discussions, and it would be great to get to know all of you. Thanks for watching my video.